Ever wondered how your handwriting could become a professional, sellable font? In this video, I'm taking you behind the scenes of my proven process, from traditional pen and paper lettering to Procreate digitizing to vectorizing your letters for font making software. As the creator of a best-selling hand-lettered font making course with over 4,000 successful students already turning their letters into profits, I'm going to show you exactly how to get started. Let's dive in. We're going to begin in Procreate. So I have an 11-inch by 8.5-inch canvas. So it's just a standard letter size. And I am using my standard Tuesday lettering guides, but you can just do this freehand if you'd like, or you can use some free lettering guides, and I'll leave a link to those right in the video description. So these ones you just paint right in on your canvas, and I'll just zoom in here. You want to put your letters on a separate layer from your guides. So I can label this guides and then create a brand new layer right above it. And I'm going to grab the solid ink brush from my ink lovers brush set. And for this example and for this mini series of font making, I'm just going to be creating a very simple all caps font just to keep things very straightforward so you know exactly the steps that you'll need to follow to convert your handwriting into a professional font. So I'm just going to write out the alphabet just in all caps. Once that's complete, we'll just add in some really simple punctuation just so you'll have an idea of how to do this part. So I'm going to add a question mark, an exclamation point, and a period. You will want to make sure that you are using black as your color for this because it'll be much easier once we vectorize this later on. The next thing I want to do is just integrate a special feature. So these are going to be standard ligatures. I always like adding these into a font because it makes the font seem much more special and more handwritten. Essentially, what a standard ligature is whenever you have a relationship between two or more characters and you would like them replaced with a special set. So if I have two B's together, for example, because a double B happens pretty often, especially in the English language, and I don't want the same B to repeat twice because then it's really obvious that it's just repeating. I want that to look a little more unique so it seems more handwritten. So I can create a standard ligature. So I'm going to tell the font making software whenever two B's are typed together, replace it with this standard ligature. So these B's look a little bit different. They're still similar style-wise, but they definitely look different than the original B that's part of the font. So that's how you can create more unique features within your font in the easiest way possible. And I'll show you exactly how to program that in the font making software in next week's video. So I like including a whole bunch of these. So I'm just going to write out a bunch of standard ligatures that I want to make and include in this all caps font. So I'll speed up the video and then I'll be right back. When you're creating your standard ligatures, you just want to make sure that you're staying true to the same style that you began with. That way these will all feel like they're a part of that original font. So I have my all caps, I've got a few standard ligatures, and now this is all ready to convert into a font. Once you have your lettering all set, now it's time to send it to the computer. So we want to turn off the guides, and then we'll send this without the guides on it to our computer. So I'm just going to hit the wrench share, and then you want to select JPEG. You could also select PNG if you wanted, and I just airdrop it right to my desktop, and then we'll pick up there. Now, if you'd prefer not to create your lettering using an iPad, if you'd rather do it with just pen and paper, I want to show you what that process looks like as well. So I'm going to set this aside, and then we'll create with pen and paper. So the first option would be, I know this looks ancient. This is actually kind of ancient. My light box here has stuck with me for, oh my gosh, almost 20 years now, and it still works. The light bulb still works on it. It's a little funky, but it does work. Just grab a light box. You can also use a computer monitor. You can use a window just with sunlight coming through. It doesn't have to be a light box. I think this light bulb's on its way out. It's kind of freaking out right now. But anyway, so I've got a bunch of printable lettering guides, and I'll leave a link to this right in the video description. You just put the lettering guide down, you grab a sheet of paper to set on top of it, and then you can just letter right on top, just like we did in Procreate, only now you're doing it traditionally. So that's how you can do that. And then you'll take your paper that has all of your letters on it, and then you can scan it into your computer. So I personally like using lettering guides. They help me a lot, especially in Procreate, but for some reason, I just do better with plain paper and no guides and just freehanding the whole thing. And I have a tendency to write uphill, which we can totally fix once we are vectorizing. And in Adobe Illustrator, I'll show you exactly how to fix that. So I find that my handwriting just comes out more natural if I'm just writing it on a sheet of paper. And that is totally fine because it's really easy to correct later on. So that is my personal preference. So for this, I'm just using a Sharpie acrylic marker. I started using this a little bit ago and I can't stop using it. I just like how bold the end of it is. So I'm just going to write out the same letters we did. That way I've got a couple of choices and I can look at the lettering I create by hand versus iPad, kind of make a decision, and then move forward with my favorite one. So I'm just going to write out the exact same characters that I just wrote out on the iPad. I've got my letters and my ligatures and my limited punctuation, but please feel free to do whatever you would like right here. The next step with this is going to be scanning it into your computer. So that's how you'll digitize it from paper and get it onto your computer. So I'll leave my scan settings on screen so you'll have them. I do want to mention that we'll be using the Glyphs app as our font software for this mini font making demo. And the Glyphs app is Mac only. So just a heads up about that. If you are a PC user, then Font Creator is a great alternative to that, but I would encourage you to still follow along, watch the process. It'll be a very, very similar process if you're using Font Creator instead of Glyphs. So I'm going to get this scanned in. I'll make that decision between which one I'm going to use, and I'll meet you over in Illustrator. We are in Adobe Illustrator, and this is where we're going to vectorize our letters. That way they can be infinitely rescalable and perfectly prepared for our font software. So in order to bring these into Illustrator, first we need to define the size of our Illustrator file. So you can use whatever you want here. I generally use just an 11 by 8.5, but because these are going to be vectorized and infinitely rescalable, size really does not matter right here. So just choose whatever canvas size you're comfortable with. I'm using the RGB color mode and 300 ppi, and I'm going to hit create. Okay, now we need to bring our lettering in. So if you airdropped your lettering from your iPad, you can just drag it right in from your downloads. Or if you scanned in your lettering, now we need to go and place it into this Illustrator file. In order to do that, you're just going to come up here and hit File and then Place and go grab it. Here is the traditional lettering that I created, and I have my selection tool selected in Illustrator, and I'm just going to rotate this. I'm holding Shift and then just rotating it. Now we need to vectorize this, and if you don't see this panel up here, we just need to select image trace here, but if you don't see this, you can also get to it by going Object, Image Trace, and then click Make. Do not hit Make and Expand because we want to adjust it a little bit. So I'm going to hit Make and then hit OK. And then I'm going to hit this little icon up here for Image Trace Panel, and this just gives us a little bit more flexibility for the settings of the trace instead of just using the default. And it probably looks like this for you. The threshold amount right here is just how thick your letters will appear. I usually keep mine closer to 100, but also the default is totally fine as well. And then you want to toggle down Advanced. So the higher your paths and the higher your corners, the more accurate your trace will be to the original. And that's really what I want right here. It will sometimes require more cleanup because you'll get any like little remnants that you may not want with your letters added to them, but that's a super simple process. So I'm going to increase my paths pretty high. I'm usually in the mid 80s for these. And then for noise, I bring mine all the way down to 1 pixel. And then down here, you just want to make sure that ignore color is unchecked here, and then hit expand. And now we can close out of this. We have committed our changes, and now these are vectorized. But we need to separate all the letters and clean them up, and if I select one, they all get selected right now. So we need to ungroup this by hitting Command-Shift-G on your keyboard, and now we can move them around, but we still have the white paper right here. So in order to get rid of that, just hit Y on your keyboard for the magic wand, click wherever the white paper is, and then hit delete. And now we are all set to begin cleaning these up. And you can skip this part if you like your trace and you like the roughness of these letters and you want to move on and make this into your font. I personally like cleaning up some of the edges, and if I have more italicized looking letters like this L, I like the opportunity right here to kind of clean those up and get them more perfect for what I had in mind for the style of the font. So I want to show you my process for that. We need to drag a guideline down. So I'm going to hit V on my keyboard, and this is just my selection tool. I'm going to hit Command R, and that just adds my rulers in. And if I click on the ruler and just drag one down, I get a guideline. And if your canvas color over here is not white like mine is, you can change that by going Illustrator, Settings, and then User Interface. And then right here where it says canvas color, just make sure white's selected. If it's looking like this, just select white and you're good to go. All right, so the goal here is to just bring all of these letters, set them on the baseline and make sure that they're hitting where you want them to hit. And if some letters are smaller than others and you don't like that, you can change that here. I personally like having mine with this style be a little bit different. I just don't want it to be too drastic, but I'm getting a really good idea of where my letters are hitting and their relationship to one another. So this is my chance to fix any issues that I see ahead of time. So once you have a few up here, I'm just going to zoom in, and I'm hitting Z on my keyboard for that and just clicking and dragging to zoom in and zoom out. And what we want to do is clean up any rough edges. And like I said before, if you don't mind this, you can just skip this part entirely. So you have three options for cleaning up your letters, so you can choose whatever works best for you. The easiest one and my favorite is using the pencil tool. And the way you do this is you need to select your letter. So I'm going to hit V on my keyboard, and this is just the selection tool again. Select your letter, and then let me zoom in a little bit closer so you can see. And then you want to hit N on your keyboard, and this is my pencil. Over here you can see it in the toolbox, and if I double click on this, I'm just using the default settings that come with Illustrator. I haven't done anything special to the pencil tool at all. And you want to begin with your letter selected, so I've got these little blue anchor points on here. With your letter selected, you want to begin along the path and finish along the path. So I'm just using my mouse right now, so I need to click, drag, come around as best you can with your mouse, and then release. So I started along the path and finished along the path. And you can just use your mouse for this entire process if you're good with your mouse. If you're not good with your mouse, option 2 is using your iPad, like a Cintiq tablet. I've got an entire video on this process that's actually included in my course, so you can watch the actual video from my course. I'll leave a link right in the video description. That is my preferred method. It makes me work a lot quicker, so you can see all the details. That way you don't have to sit here and watch me do that entire process if you're not interested in it. So there's a link to that video right in the video description. So that's the process that I typically use, but it's the same idea as using the pencil tool, only I'm using my iPad and I'm mirroring my screen from my desktop onto my iPad and following that. The other option, if you're a more advanced Illustrator user, you can use your pen tool and adjust your anchor points and your handles if that sounds like a totally different language to you. I would recommend just listening to this part, that way you just have a familiarity with it in case you need to adjust a single anchor point here or there. So when I have this letter selected and I choose my direct select tool, so it's right next to your selection tool, you can see all the little points. These are your anchor points. And if I click on an anchor point, you can see I've got two little nodes that have circles on them. Those are your handles. If you move your handles, it changes the curve that's associated with your anchor point. The more anchor points you have, the more difficult it is to adjust the curves because you only have a little bit of a distance between them. So if you need to remove some anchor points, you don't want to click on one and then hit delete, because that will open your path. So if you hit your hyphen key on your keyboard, that is going to be your delete anchor point tool. And if I just click on this, now I can remove any extra points that I don't need here. And then I can go back to my direct select tool, which is this one right here. If I click on the anchor point and then drag out the handle, now I can make a more pleasing curve. So you can go in and adjust and get really detailed with this process if you're familiar with Illustrator already and using the pen tool. That is option number 3. So I would recommend just saving this if you're a more advanced user. The pencil tool works fine, and these are supposed to look hand-drawn and hand-lettered anyway, so you can totally get by just using the pencil tool. So I'm going to speed up the process of me cleaning up all of these letters, and the end goal is to get your letters the way that you want them to look, and we're just going to move them all along this baseline. So Easy peasy. I'm going to, like I said, I'll speed up the video, and when I'm back, all of these will be cleaned up. They'll all be along this baseline, all of these, and then we'll be ready to prepare our Illustrator file for the font software. I have all the letters cleaned up now, and you probably noticed I pulled another guide down just to have a general height idea. So as I place things on the regular baseline, like these R's, I want them to dip a little beneath the baseline, but I still want to make sure that they're a common height when compared to the other letters. So it doesn't look weird when they're typed out. I just noticed one of my standard ligatures right here. I don't like the ends placement, so I'm just gonna toggle that. Okay, so the next thing we need to do in order to get this all ready for our font making software is we need to make sure that we group everything together, because we're going to be rescaling them and repositioning everything. So if you have any letters that have other components to them, like an exclamation point that has the stem and then the dot, we need to make sure these are grouped. So I just select them. Let me grab my selection tool, which is V on your keyboard, and I just click and drag. I call this rubber band selecting, and then we need to group it. So Command G to group, or you can go Object Group, and it'll do the same thing. So I need to do that with the question mark as well, and I also need to do it with any of these standard ligatures that we wrote out. So I'm just going to come through and group all of these together. So I'm just rubber band selecting and then Command G for all of these. And if you have two that are paired together already, then you don't have to worry about it. So the other thing I wanted to quickly mention, because I always get asked this all the time, why I use Illustrator instead of Affinity. And the main reason is everything that you need is right in Illustrator. And I completely understand and sympathize with the fact that Illustrator is a monthly subscription versus Affinity, which is a one-time payment. But for what you get from Illustrator, especially with this font making process, the ease of cleaning up your letters, of vectorizing them, which you can't do directly in Affinity, and then the next part where we're going to organize everything and get them perfectly positioned to bring into our font making software, it's just completely seamless if you're using Adobe Illustrator. Yes, you can figure out workarounds for Affinity, but for paying 1 month just to take care of it for the font that you're working on, I think it is so worth it, especially if you plan on selling this font over and over and over again. It will definitely pay for itself. So that's my little spiel about Illustrator. The other thing that I wanted to mention is you may be wondering, why are we going through this whole process if you could just use a plugin like FontSelf? And I have used FontSelf before. FontSelf is fine if you're just making a font for yourself or for personal use. If you plan on selling your font though, you should really be using pro software, because at any point in time, if you have a customer that has an issue with your font, you will know exactly where to go to fix it. If you've built everything using pro font software, if you have a plugin that's automating the process and something goes wrong, you don't even know where to look, and you may not even be able to fix it for that customer. And if you plan on selling fonts long term, you definitely don't want to upset a customer base that could purchase from you again in the future. So you want those positive reviews. You want to feel confident that you're putting out a high quality product that you can support no matter what a customer comes to you with. So another little spiel about plugins. And now that we've taken care of that, we are ready to get these letters ready for our font software. So just make sure you've got everything grouped that you need grouped. I'm going to save this file. It's just nice to have a backup in case things go awry when we're putting everything together and you need to come back to this step. I just like having a file that I know that I can come back to if I ever need to. So I'm just going to save this really quickly. So I'm just saving this as cleaned letters because that's what they are. They're all cleaned up. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to select everything. And then up here, these are your alignment options. You can also open up a window over here for alignment options, and you can get to that by going Window, Align, and it will pop it open. And what we need to do is we need everything aligned to the left. You can also align it to the top too if you wanted, but this is the most important thing, is they're all aligned to the left. And now we've got this little chunk of all of our letters that you can't see anything in, and that's also fine. We're going to copy them now. So you can go Edit, Copy, or you can hit Command C on your keyboard. And now we need to create a brand new document. So I'm going to go File, New, and we need to make sure that we're changing to pixels this time. This is going to allow us to bring these letters into our font making software perfectly positioned. Everything's going to be super simple. So I'm going to change this to 1000 pixels by 1000 pixels. And then we're going to hit Create. And before we paste those letters in here, we need to go to Document Setup. So I'm going to click on Document Setup, hit Edit Artboards, and then up here where you see X and Y, under Y you just want to put a negative right here, and then hit Return. And this is just going to bump it up on your main canvas. And now when we copy and paste from Illustrator into the font software, everything will be positioned really nicely for us. So now we need to paste our letters in, and I'm hitting Command V for that, or you can go Edit, Paste, and I'll paste them in, and they look really tiny because we made them at whatever size that they were scanned in at. So now we need to enlarge them to fill this artboard, and they're kind of all together, so it makes it really easy. If you hit Transform up here, right here you can see our width is 80, our height is 54. You want to make sure that this is checked. Right here you want to make sure it's linked. That part's pretty important. And we want to change the height now to 1000 pixels, so it fully fills this artboard. So I'm going to change this to 1000 pixels, hit Enter, and now they're nice and large, and we can kind of just pop them right here. And now we need to be able to differentiate which letters are which letters. In order to do that, we're going to come over to our Layers panel. You can get to this by going Window, Layers. And this little hamburger drop down right here, click on that, and then choose Release to Layers Sequence. And when you do that, it will put every single character that was grouped on its own layer. And you can see the little thumbnail previews right here, which is really nice. And if you need to see these a little larger, if they're not coming in large enough for you to see what's going on, because that part's pretty important, you want to hit the little hamburger again, and then you can click on Panel Options, and then you can increase the size. So if I go to large and hit OK, now I can see everything a lot bigger. So it's easier to find things, and that can be really helpful. Everything is turned on right now though, so it's really hard to tell what's happening. So if you come up to this very top layer, it's basically all these layers are within one layer. So we need to turn off the master group layer, and then we can turn on the individual layers so we can see everything. So hover over this little eyeball and then hold the Option key on your keyboard and then click on the eyeball, and that will turn everything off but keep the main group on. And now I can turn on one layer at a time. We are all good to go now, and we can kind of come through and make sure everything that was grouped stays grouped. I can center this a little bit more. It doesn't really matter. You just want to make sure you're in the proximity of this big square. And for these longer standard ligatures that are 3 characters long, don't worry if it goes out of the bounds of that artboard. Everything will be completely fine moving forward. So once you have this, you are all ready to bring it into the font software, which we are going to deep dive into in next week's video. Now that we have our letters all ready to go, in next week's video, I'm going to take you through the Glyphs app, how to establish spacing for your letters, program in those standard ligatures, and export your font as an OTF file. I've placed links to everything mentioned in this video right in the video description. And if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell icon so you can be notified as soon as next week's video goes live. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next week.